Hello everyone, I'm Milo and welcome to my town. For this video, I want to slightly go back to my roots. I returned to form to the type of video that kickstarted this channel in the first place. That was my special for Kirby's 30th anniversary, where I did a 4-part video on a grand overview of most of the Kirby games. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the latest mainline title in the series, which originally released over 3 years ago in 2022, recently got an upgrade in the form of a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, with enhanced textures and frame rate. But more importantly, it also received what we can call a DLC expansion titled Star Cross World, featuring new levels, modful transformations, and I think most important than anything else, some severe lore bombs, some more hidden than others. In today's video, I wanted to do a deep dive into all of the new lore information for the Kirby series that is found in this content expansion, as it doesn't just expand on the already existing one found in the base game, but also throw some new and pretty big implications that add to the main series lore as a whole. It's been a few months since the DLC released, but I've been busy both researching and writing this video and doing some other stuff. But now I can comfortably present my findings. I took measures to look at what the game gives us in multiple languages, including the original Japanese, to make sure there were no potential mistranslations, and my aim is to share what I believe are the proper hints given to us for the series lore, as well as some theories with supporting information. Needless to say, this video will contain spoilers for the entire main game and Star Cross World, so you've been warned. Incidentally, I actually livestreamed the entire game from beginning to end right here on the channel, so I'll link to it if you want to check it out. Anyway, let's dive in. Just so we're all caught up, let me quickly summarize the information we learned in the base game. I'll go into the actual chronological order of events as opposed to what we see in the game, as it will be easier to understand when we get to the new stuff. The story takes place in a land far away from Dreamland. It looks like a completely different universe, that we'll call the Forgotten Land. In this land, there lived a civilization that grew and prospered. At a certain point in their existence, an invading force arrived at their planet and started a campaign of destruction. But eventually, the people of the land were able to capture it. They labeled him as IDF-86, and they began examining it, leading to research efforts that allowed them to obtain and repurpose the spatial teleportation abilities that it had. 30 years passed, and during an experiment, a part of IDF-86 suddenly separated from its main body, manifested as a new specimen, and escaped the lab. The researchers were not able to recover it. Now incomplete, IDF-86 remained in a state of stasis in a custom capsule made for it. An unspecified amount of time passed, and using the warp technology they had developed, the people of this world left it behind, and went to a land of dreams. Only animals remained in the land, and the additional specimen that had separated from IDF-86, who took the name of Elfilin and started living together with the animals. Although he remained as a fraction of his original self, IDF-86 had strong psychic powers. Even without its full form or the ability to move, he began plotting for a way to restore himself. After even more time, he exerted his psychic powers to control the minds and dreams of some of the animals in the land, and eventually detected Popstar, a faraway planet with an abundance of wild beasts. He opened a portal connecting the two worlds and started sucking them in. A lot of Dreamland's inhabitants, including Kirby and friends, also got transported as a result. Elfilin had gone into hiding after the animals had gotten wild and were acting out of character, but eventually, wild beasts arrived to the land. Elfilin helped them in their confusion by building a town together, but eventually, the Beast Pack started showing up to capture the wild beasts and Elfilin. This is where Kirby finally shows up and rescues some of them, joining forces with Elfilin to rescue the wild beasts. Along the way, Elfilin gets captured, and Kirby finds him when they are both in front of IDF-86, in the very research lab he was stuck in for ages. After the calculated strategies are fooled by Kirby, the creature bursted out in a rage and absorbed a lot of the animals that it had been controlling, until it finally caught Elfilin and absorbed him too into his core, managing to complete himself once again as his true form, Fecto Elfilis. Kirby defeats him, rescues Elfilin from its core, and in a very epic moment, knocks his enemy's body away. But having such strong psychic powers, he retreats into his own dreams, taking the leader of the Beast Pack as a vessel to possess. Kirby and company traverse the psychic world of his dreams and reach Forgo. Morphonite shows up, but it's defeated, and Elfilis resurges from within its core. Having stolen part of the Knight's power after he tried to absorb him initially, he achieves a soul form called Chaos Elfilis. After an intense fight, he is defeated, and the energy left behind returns to Elfilin, making him now a whole being, and granting him a small portion of the teleporting abilities. So, that is a recap of the main events of the base game. Strictly speaking, that is all that is directly presented to us. And by the way, if you're wondering, yes, the true arena is canon, at least the final boss is. An in-game trophy confirms a portal open within the Colosseum that leads to the fights against the phantom enemies and eventually with Chaos Elfilis, who we do see escape at the end of the postgame. But that said, I do want you to keep this in mind for later. Now I want to talk about some of the actual lore we can gauge from the previous explanation. First of all, the residents of the Forgotten Land are the Ancients. You know, just one of the very foundations of the lore of the franchise. We know from previous games that they were a powerful race that excelled in both technology and magic, and built some of the powerful artifacts that Kirby has encountered in his past adventures, such as the Fountain of Dreams, the Galactic Novas, or Stardream. They seemingly disappeared in a distant past, however. The Forgotten Lands residents pretty much match this by a lot. We know they use some magic-like advanced technology, obtained from Elfilis, to flee their world and enter a so-called Land of Dreams. This pretty much refers to the universe where Dreamland exists. Once there, they continue their efforts as a civilization and build all the artifacts that we know of their legacy. At this point, I do want to make a small amendment. One that I used to preach as a fact, but that actually could definitely be up to debate. Were the Ancients a single group? Or were there two distinct ones that eventually unified with the powers they each controlled? If I am honest, up until this point I had always assumed that the Ancients were one and the same. But after some recent forum browsing, I've seen that a lot of people have been referring to the Ancients from the Forgotten Land as specifically the Science Ancients. From Star Allies' Highness fight, we know that eventually the Ancients who dominated science sealed the magic wielders away, as they deemed their powers too strong. If they were always a single group, the assumption goes that these people first dominated science, then traveled to the main Kirby universe, in which the presence of elements allowed for magic to be adopted and used. As such, they became masters of both. If they were different, then that does definitely mean that the Forgotten Lands Ancients were indeed the science ones, and eventually met the magic wielders in the main Kirby universe, joining forces and creating the many artifacts mentioned beforehand. An union of both definitely needed to exist for machines such as the Clockwork Stars, mechanical wonders that were capable of granting wishes. Whether they were always the same or not, ultimately is not insanely relevant. But I wanted to mention it at least, as I personally always believed that they were a single group, ever since 2022 when we first got these tidbits of information, and only until recently has my notion of it been challenged. We don't have any concrete proof to claim either way, but it's worth keeping in mind. One final thing before I conclude this section. In the base game, the main song which plays in the universe at the very beginning, as well as in the credits, is Welcome to the New World. I was saying since 2022, without any specific indication that we could find, that in-universe this song was made to promote the travel to another world for the residents of the land, and we can conclude that said world ended up being the main Kirby universe due to its lyrics. Funny enough, the song works backward for Kirby's point of view, being the one exploring a new world at the beginning of the game. Either way, soon enough you'll see how this turned out to be exactly on point. Well, now let's get into the new stuff. To begin, let's briefly go over the story in the DLC. Canonically, after completing the first area of the game, Natural Plains, as Kirby and Elfilin are cruising through the land, a crystallized meteor enters the planet, breaks its crystals apart, and crash lands into the ocean. where a sunken volcanic island rises up. Upon inspecting it, they find the evil meteor. A researcher astronomer Waddle Dee shows up and explains that, upon reading the legends of this land, meteors have previously fallen to it, and one carrying the Star of Darkness could plunge the land into destruction. Then they find out that some of the crystallized chunks that fell into the land are these creatures called starries. When awakened, they will rush back to the evil meteor and seal it in crystal again. From here, another adventure begins for Kirby and Elfilin, revisiting places from their adventures that have now been affected by the fallen crystals, changing the environment and revealing new paths. By the way, if you happen to upgrade to the Switch 2 edition while you're in between Original Wasteland and the end of the game, there will be an alternate cutscene without Elfilin. Kirby and Elfilin gather enough starries for the sealing to complete, and they head back to the volcanic island. Unfortunately, they took too long, and the Star of Darkness awakens and starts absorbing the starries themselves, in an eerily familiar fashion. After plunging down into some old docking platform, the crystals help them ascend once again, where they encounter a frightening scene. Another of the Elfilis species, Meteon Elfilis. He has absorbed the essence of the starries and has crystal-based powers at his disposal. After a gruesome fight, he becomes larger and presents a second battle, and when that is defeated, its power collapses back into his core, the orb in his head, bearing an incredibly familiar appearance. Kirby is able to fight back and defeat it. At that time, the starry power is freed once again, and the liberated starries manage to complete the sealing successfully this time, before parting into the skies with Meteon Elfilis sealed at last. Well then, now we can get into the good part. As an opener, I'll mention that after beating Star-Crossed World, a new arena opens up in the Colosseum, where at the end you face a new version of Chaos Elfilis that wields his brother's spear. Oh, right, they were brothers! They aren't just simply of the same species. Meteon Elfilis is the older sibling, that ended up arriving to this land after his brother's failed attempt. Also on that note, we were given some information about their spears, in how they are formed based on what they absorb. They are referred to as invasive in nature, and since Elfilis absorbed a bunch of different animals to take form, I can see some shapes of resembling DNA sequences on his spear. At least I believe that's an inspiration for it. For his brother, he absorbed the crystal powers and gained them for himself. Anyways, at the end of this fight, the exact same sequence that you'd see in the former True Arena plays again. So, what's the deal here? Remember when I told you to keep that one fact in mind earlier in the video? I think this is a case of a slight retcon. Due to the presence of the DLC content, I believe this is meant to be the actual canonical fight against Chaos Elfilis. They pretty much replaced the existing one before the DLC. From a gameplay point of view, it's fine to have both arenas, as the EX version is definitely harder, and of course has content from the post-release DLC. In Universe, however, even though we had established that the True Arena is canon, we can't have the sequence of Elfilins receiving the remaining energy from his original self happen twice. So the idea is that in canon, the original True Arena didn't happen, only this one that accounts for the events of Star-Crossed World. Crossing out the other one doesn't change much, as the events that transpired there also do here, but I wanted to definitely mention this fact. So now, let's talk about Meteors. On the credit sequence for Star-Crossed World, we hear the in-universe song titled Twinkling Star Showers, which is performed by the same person that sang Welcome to the New World. We'll have some time to discuss about her later, but for now I want to focus on the lyrics of the song, as they go deeper than a simple entertainment piece. In short, the song tells of a tale of a legend, long foretold in the land, but that had failed to be properly deciphered and eventually fell into obscurity. That is, until one day, a certain songstress got a prophetic dream, one that helped her properly understand the legend and that she shared with the world. The song is based on the legend itself, though the completed piece would not see the light of day for quite some time. The song tells of meteors that come from afar, from the corners of the galaxy, that come into the planet and break open, sending a dual storm down to the land. After its children have fallen to the land, ancient people soar up in ships and sleep as in cradles. The song seems to end on a rather positive note, as it tells of the planet blooming and shining. Through the song, themes of a cycle are mentioned, and also how its children weave the future. That is the main gist of the lyrics, but I do want to go on a deeper dive on them. First of all, I'd like to mention that in this game, a made-up language is used. That's the one in which the lyrics of the songs are sung in, but also they correspond to the text you see all across the game. This is what they correspond to, so it can be decoded this way. For the sake of convenience, I will refer to it as the ancient language. Also important to mention is that both the in-game assets and the lyrics directly decode to English, which tells me that the English version of the game probably went through heavy scrutiny to make sure the meaning was minimally lost in translation. Still, I took it upon myself to cross-check the Japanese lyrics and translated them myself, for a better interpretation and understanding of them. From that, I have several interesting comments to discuss. As we know, the meteor is none other than Meteor Elfilis himself. Even though it's kind of shaped like a heart, when you really look close you can see it resembles the larval state of Elfilis, so this seems to be the resting stage. We know the reason for him to come here was due to the failure of his kin, though we don't exactly know when it took aim on the planet. It must have been quite some time if it truly come from the edge of the universe. Since the earliest the meteor falls happens at the end of World 1, then it must have been on course from beforehand. The failure it refers to is the original capture of Elfilis, and not his defeat by Kirby later in the game. In the Japanese description for the sealed meteor, they mention cycles of countless years that depict both the past and future, and this is true for the song as well. You'll notice that the song is progressive. It begins with "Tell me the tale", then "What happens next", and eventually leading to "Tell me the conclusion". It tells of the stages of the events that would happen: a meteor falling, crashing down into the land and sinking it, and then ships sailing to the stars, ending with a lonely, shining planet. The prophecy foretold that a planet-destroying comet would bring the end to the land, and the solution was to leave it. Interestingly enough, the English lyrics mention the ships carrying the precious ones, but the Japanese lyrics specifically use the term for ancients. An interesting terminology that I found is that the song repeatedly uses "the song of your unwanted children weave the future". The Japanese uses the term "otoshiko", which literally translates to bastard or unwanted child. The kanji on the expression is the one for drop or fall, so it makes sense in contrast, as crystals and starries fell to the land. But also, the unwanted term makes sense, since the starries simply got separated due to the crash landing, as their own intention was to contain the dark star. So the term unwanted child also makes sense in a way. About the starries, in some of the descriptions we see from them, we learn that they simply wander around the cosmos, though they have the power to travel space and time. When they discover the evil meteor, they crystallize their bodies to seal it away. This point is really interesting to me, and it's consistent across languages. Part of me wants to believe that the sealing efforts weren't actually done all that long before it entered the planet, and this is why it was on a crashing course and broke apart as it was falling. It's also thanks to the starry's efforts that the meteor fell to the ocean, as it originally was aiming for the continent itself. Another interesting fact about them is that they were used to seal away a fiend that threatened the entire galaxy, a description that is often used to refer to galactonite. Given their unknown origin, they could have actually been creations from the ancients, or a simple discovery from them. The English description lists them as originating from a twinkling planet, though this is not in the Japanese text, so it may just be added flair. Going back to the song lyrics, I had mentioned how there were explicit uses of cycles of many years, and from the astronomer Waddle D we can also learn that meteors have landed here in the past. The song may not be talking about a single specific meteor like the one we see, but at the very least, one additional one in the past. It may be odd, but not all of the details narrated may happen in order. I think the legend itself spoke of pasts and futures indifferently. While most of the references of the shining meteor definitely point to the one we see in the game, there was at least one other meteor, and that was none other than Elfilis himself. With some of the new figure descriptions, we can have some added understanding on Elfilis' original conquest on this planet. He most likely crash-landed in a similar fashion as we see in the game, but with nobody to help gather the starries, he simply awoke. Originally, I thought he may not have been crystallized, but Elflin does confirm having been on the starry's embrace sometime in the past, and that is why he can hear their voices. When Elfilis awakened, he began his campaign of destruction. We get all of this from the description of his brother's figure. The legends were considered fantasy, but IDF-86's arrival and the sinking of the islands gave it credibility. I believe the timeline here is that the songstress got her prophetic dream and shared it with the leaders of this world, and later on, some of the events depicted in there began happening. This made the ancients take measures to guarantee their salvation by following the legend. Upon capturing Elfilis and extracting space warp technology from him, they made ships and escaped this land, since if the legend continued to happen, another meteor would crash after that would lead to a long land. Some final remarks of the song. First is that in the Japanese version, some verses have specific lyrics in actual English. The first is in the verse, "Is this the birth or the end of days? Darkness or light?" with its Japanese counterpart being, "Tonight, darkness or light, whose birthday would it be?" The words "whose birthday" are explicitly used, and I couldn't but draw a relationship of how Highness in Star Allies used "Happy Birthday" when bringing back Boy Termina. I will admit this one is a bit of a stretch, but it got me thinking. Could the Elfilis kind be a form of void from this dimension? Think about it for a moment. They are mentioned as being born in the corners of the galaxy, and they travel through it in a dormant, heart-like state. Doesn't it sound slightly similar to void? I'm not brushed up in all the Star Allies lore implications myself, but I did remember about the specific information from the Japanese True Core of Void Termina that said that there are as many voids freely floating as there are skies, with the skies here referring to dimensions. This part gets complemented by the eventual Jamba Hearts and Cabby Super Kirby clash when the Aeon Hero opens dimensional rifts. My final evidence for this was the final core of Meteor Elfilis oddly resembling that of Void Termina. As I said, I'm not insanely confident in this theory, but I also wanted to mention it at least. Some of the other explicit use of English comes in the verse, "After children have fallen, where are you now?" "Where are you now" is explicitly used. After this, it describes the ancient sporting ships and, as in cradles, soaring through the cosmos. The English version uses "where will you go" instead. I think this helps bridge the very concept of traveling through space and time that the ancients did, as they left on ships to the stars, asking the questions of where did they go and where are they now. One final remark is that the song itself seems to predict the good outcome that happened with Kirby fighting Meteor Elfilis, as it has a planet fighting for its soul, a bell tolling with life, and finally, once again, the song of your children weeps life. To me, this represents Kirby's success over the invading force, the sound of freedom and salvation that it brought to the land, and once again the star is marking the future, as their rescue and resealing allow the land to continue being. Anyway, that is mainly what analyzing the song tells us and the surrounding information to it. While some of this isn't incredibly superficial, it's nothing compared to the rabbit hole we're still missing. This video grew quite a lot, so I think I'm gonna end it here and release a second part going into detail on all the secrets that the songstress behind the songs has for us. For now, I really appreciate you watching thus far. I really wanted to cover these topics as I've been kind of obsessed with them after finishing the DLC. Although it took me some time, I really wanted to get my analysis out there. And we're not even done with the craziest part, so please check out the next part once it's released. For now, this will be all. Don't forget, you'll always be welcome in my town. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.